They say Japan is a land of beauty, of cherry blossoms and ancient temples. But beneath its serene landscapes lie secrets, whispers of the past, ghostly figures in the night, and spirits that never found peace. What secrets do the shadows of Japan hold? Stay with me, because tonight we're diving deep into Japan's darkest horror stories, ones that will make you question reality itself. For centuries, Japan has been a land filled with folklore, haunted legends, and ghostly encounters. From the terrifying Kuchisake Onna to the eerie stillness of Aokigahara, every dark corner of this country has a story to tell. But what if I told you some of these tales are not just folklore? What if they were real? Tonight, we explore Japan's most terrifying sagas from ancient times, the haunted samurai era, and the spirits that still wander among us. The story begins in the late 1500s during the Sengoku period, a time of brutal warfare, shifting alliances, and unspeakable treachery. In a quiet village nestled between the mountains and the sea, there lived a woman named Lady Masako. Masako was no ordinary woman. She was the wife of Lord Ishida, a ruthless samurai who fought for one of the great warlords of the time. She was known for her beauty, grace, and intelligence, but more than anything, she was known for her love, her unwavering devotion to her husband, despite his many sins. But love is not always enough to keep darkness at bay. One fateful night, while Lord Ishida was away at battle, Masako received a visitor, a messenger drenched in blood, barely able to stand. With his dying breath, he whispered a warning. Her husband had betrayed her. He had allied with an enemy clan, and in return for their favor, he had offered her as part of the deal. Masako refused to believe it until she saw them. Samurai, dressed in black, creeping through the village under the cover of darkness. They had come for her, not as a prisoner, but as a sacrifice. Act 2, the ritual. Masako fought with everything she had, but she was no warrior. The samurai dragged her to an ancient shrine deep in the forest. There, under the crimson glow of a full moon, she was bound, her screams swallowed by the night. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a priest cloaked in tattered robes, his face hidden behind a mask. He began to chant. The samurai knelt before the altar, their voices low, murmuring prayers in a language she did not understand. And then she saw it, the blade glinting in the moonlight. She realized too late, this was no mere sacrifice. This was an ancient ritual, a forbidden ceremony meant to summon something old, something hungry. The blade came down. Blood stained the earth, but Masako's story did not end there. Act 3, the vengeance. For days, the village was silent. No birds, no voices, just the howling wind through the trees. Then, on the seventh night, the screaming began. One by one, the samurai who had taken part in the ritual were found dead, their bodies twisted in agony, their faces frozen in terror. Some were torn apart as if by wild beasts. Others were found staring blankly into the sky, their eyes burned black. And at the heart of it all, standing in the shadows of the shrine, was her. Lady Masako had returned, but she was no longer human. Her once beautiful face was now a mask of horror, her eyes hollow, her mouth twisted into a blood-stained grin. Her long black hair floated as if caught in an invisible current, and her fingers, they were too long, ending in razor-sharp claws. She was an Onryo now, a vengeful spirit born from the depths of betrayal and rage, and she would not rest until every last soul who had wronged her suffered the same fate she had. Act 4. The curse lives on. The village never recovered. Within a year, it was abandoned, left to the creeping vines and the whispers of the dead. But Masako's vengeance did not stop there. Legends say that her spirit still lingers, waiting in the shadows, searching for those who have wronged the innocent. Some claim to have seen her wandering near old temples, her eyes burning like embers. Others say she appears to men who have betrayed their loved ones, whispering their sins in the dark before taking them to the other side. And then there are the stories of those who dared to speak her name. They say that if you say Lady Masako 3 times under a crimson moon, she will come for you. First, you will hear a whisper. Then a shadow will flicker in the corner of your eye. And finally, she will appear, standing behind you, her cold breath on your neck. And when you turn around, you will never be seen again. In the Edo period, where honor and duty meant everything, a young samurai named Ichiro had everything a man could desire: strength, skill, and a promising future under a powerful daimyo. But he had one weakness. Her name was Aiko. Aiko was known for her beauty and kindness. She loved Ichiro with all her heart, dreaming of a future together. And for a time, Ichiro shared that dream. He promised her marriage, swore to protect her, and whispered words of love under the cherry blossoms. But ambition is a cruel master. Ichiro had been offered a path to greatness, but to accept it, he had to leave behind all weaknesses, including Aiko. He chose honor, duty, and power, and he abandoned the woman who had given him her heart. Days turned into weeks, And then she heard the news. Ichiro was to marry another, the daughter of a noble family. The betrayal was more than she could bear. And so one night, beneath the full moon, Aiko walked into the river, her white kimono billowing, her final breath a curse upon the man who had forsaken her. At first it was small things, a shadow in the corner of his eye, the soft scent of jasmine, Aiko's favorite flower, lingering where it shouldn't be. Then the whispers began. Why did you betray me, Ichiro? The voice haunted him in his sleep, in the silence of the night, in the reflection of his sword. And then she came. There she stood, Aiko, but not as she once was. Her once beautiful face was twisted, her eyes hollow pools of darkness. Her kimono, drenched in river water, clung to her body. Her mouth, slightly open, let out a slow, rattling breath. Why did you betray me, Ichiro? He tried to escape. He fled to temples, sought priests, and performed rituals. But Aiko's spirit followed. No matter where he went, the whispers, the scent of jasmine, the chill in the air, she was always there, waiting, watching, growing stronger. On the final night, Ichiro was found dead in his chambers. His body was untouched, no wounds, no signs of struggle, but his face was frozen in a look of pure terror, as if he had seen something beyond human comprehension in his last moments. And scrawled in ink on the walls, written in his own shaking hand, were the final words. She is here. She is watching. Some say Ichiro's soul never found peace, forever tormented by his sins. And as for Aiko, her story became a legend, whispered from generation to generation. Even now, in the quiet of the night, if you listen closely, you might hear it, the voice of a woman, whispering from the darkness, why did you betray me? Our story takes place in the late 1600s during the Edo period, a time when samurai still roamed the land bound by honor and duty. Deep in the mountainous region of Fukui Prefecture stood the quiet village of Matsuoka, nestled in the shadow of an ancient, decrepit shrine known only to a few. The shrine was built centuries earlier, dedicated to an unknown kami, a deity whose name had been erased from history. The locals avoided it, warning their children never to step near its torii gates, whispering of terrible misfortunes that befell those who did. But one man ignored these warnings. Lord Hideo Takahashi, a ruthless and ambitious samurai known for his thirst for power. Lord Hideo was not just feared, he was hated. He had risen through ranks by deceit, striking down allies and betraying even his closest friends. Many whispered, that he was cursed long before he ever set foot in Matsuoka, but his downfall came when he defiled the Whispering Shrine. One fateful night, Hideo led his warriors to the shrine, determined to seize whatever supernatural power it held. "The gods favor the strong," he sneered, brushing past the rotting wooden gates despite the frantic pleas of the villagers. Inside the shrine, the air was thick, damp, and suffocating. Strange markings covered the walls, symbols not of devotion, but of something far darker. At the center of the shrine stood a small blackened well, its stone rim cracked and slick with moss. Ignoring his men's growing unease, Hideo strode forward and, with a cruel laugh, spat into the well. "Show me your power," he mocked. The wind outside howled, then a whisper, soft at first, like a distant echo, then louder, hissing, creeping into their ears. Hideo turned, demanding to know who had spoken, but his men stood frozen, eyes wide with terror. The whispers weren't coming from them. They were rising from the well. And then the ground trembled. A shadow erupted from the depths. A twisting, writhing form with hollow eyes and a gaping mouth. A spirit bound by rage and betrayal. Its voice was 1,000 whispers, yet deafening. Betrayer, thief, murderer, your blood will pay. Panic overtook Hideo's men as they fled. But the samurai himself stood rooted in place, unable to move, unable to breathe. The spirit lunged, wrapping around him like a choking fog, and in an instant he vanished. Not a single scream, not a trace of his body, only silence remained. For weeks after Hideo's disappearance, strange events plagued the region. His warriors who had fled that night were found dead, one by one, faces contorted in expressions of sheer terror, their throats slit as if by an unseen blade. And then there was the whispering. Villagers reported hearing it at night, floating through the air, a faint, desperate hissing calling their names. Some claimed to see the shadow of a man standing just beyond the torii gate of the shrine, motionless, watching. The whispers drove people mad. Families fled, and soon the village of Matsuoka was abandoned. Swallowed by time, even centuries later, those who dared to visit the ruined shrine would recount the same horrors. Their names whispered in the darkness, a shadow lingering in the trees, a choking pressure around their throats, as if unseen hands were dragging them into the abyss. In 1987, a group of university students eager to explore Japan's supernatural sights, ventured into the ruins of Matsuoka Shrine. They laughed at the warnings, dismissed the stories, but as they approached the well, the air turned frigid. A whisper rose from the depths. One student, a skeptic named Ryo, scoffed. "Just the wind," he said. Then something dragged him forward. His friends watched in horror as an invisible force lifted Ryo into the air. His eyes rolled back, mouth open in a silent scream. Then the whisper became a roar. "Betrayer, thief, murderer, your blood will pay." And just like Hideo, he was gone. The remaining students ran, never speaking of that night again. But they say the whispers still call out in Matsuoka. Perhaps they always will. So what do you believe? Was Hideo Takahashi truly cursed by the shrine? Or was he simply another arrogant man who met his fate at the hands of something far older and far more powerful? One thing is certain. In Japan, the past never truly stays buried. And if you ever find yourself near an abandoned shrine, listen closely, because sometimes the whispers are calling for you. During the late 1500s, the age of warring states, Sengoku Jidai, Japan was fractured, with feudal lords, daimyo, battling for control. Among them was Lord Arima Nariatsu, a ruthless warlord known for his insatiable thirst for power. Arima sought to build an impenetrable fortress in the mountains of Kyushu, near the treacherous Red River Akamizu, a place already whispered to be cursed. The land was soaked in blood from countless battles. But Arima did not fear spirits. He feared defeat. With thousands of laborers, he constructed a Kamizu castle, a fortress surrounded by sheer cliffs, with thick walls and hidden traps to ward off invaders. The castle became his stronghold, a place where he ruled with iron discipline. Among his warriors was General Katsuro Tsukahara, Arima's most loyal samurai. Katsuro was a man of honor, renowned for his skill with the katana, but his unwavering loyalty would soon be his downfall. As Arima's power grew, so did his paranoia. He suspected betrayal at every corner, even from those closest to him. One fateful night, his advisors whispered treason. "Katsuro seeks to overthrow you." This was a lie. Katsuro had sworn his life to Arima. He had fought in his battles, defended his lands, and spilled blood in his name. But Arima, driven mad by suspicion, saw only one course of action: Under the blood-red moon, he summoned Katsuro to the great hall of Akamizu Castle. Before the general could kneel, guards seized him. "Katsuro, Tsukahara, you have betrayed me." Katsuro protested, but Arima had already made his decision. He ordered a punishment so cruel that it would ensure no one would ever dare betray him again. Katsuro was dragged to the castle's inner chamber, bound in chains, and thrown into a pit beneath the castle, a dungeon with no exit, a place where the forgotten were left to rot. But Arima underestimated the strength of a samurai's rage. For weeks, Katsuro survived in the darkness, fed only scraps. His once proud armor rusted, his sword shattered. He called out for justice, but the only answer was silence. Then something changed. The night of the next blood moon, a deep, unnatural whisper filled the dungeon. A voice, ancient and malevolent. "Do you seek vengeance?" Katsuro, broken and enraged, whispered a single word: "Yes." A wave of darkness engulfed him. His body convulsed as whispers of the dead surged into his soul, binding him in a pact of blood and suffering. When the guards came to dispose of him, they found the dungeon empty. The chains lay broken. The air was suffocatingly cold. And that night, Akamizu Castle became a graveyard. The massacre began at midnight. Guards patrolling the halls heard footsteps, yet saw no one. Then came the whispers, crawling into their ears, turning their minds to madness. Shadows moved unnaturally, slithering across walls. Torches flickered, revealing fleeting glimpses of a figure, armor shattered, face twisted in eternal rage. One by one, they fell, slashed by an unseen blade. Their blood pooled on the floors, running through the castle like veins of death. Lord Arima awoke to the sound of screaming. He rushed to the great hall, where his warriors stood frozen in terror. The doors creaked open, and there, standing beneath the flickering candlelight, was Katsuro. His body was no longer human. His eyes glowed with a hellish fire, his skin pale as death. His shattered armor fused with his flesh, and in his hands he held a blade blackened by vengeance. Arima screamed for his men to attack, but their swords passed through Katsuro as if he were a shadow. The last thing Arima saw was the face of his former friend, whispering his name before the darkness took him. By sunrise, Akamizu Castle was silent. No living soul remained. When villagers climbed the mountain, they found the fortress abandoned, soaked in blood, but without a single corpse. The once grand banners of Arima's clan lay tattered, and the great hall was reduced to ruin. The legend spread. Katsuro's vengeful spirit had consumed them all. To this day, few dare to approach the ruins. Travelers who stray too close report hearing whispers, feeling unseen eyes watching. Some claim to see a lone samurai standing in the mist, his katana dripping with darkness. On the night of the blood moon, the screams return, and Katsuro still waits for those who would dare betray him. So, what do you believe? Was Katsuro Tsukahara's curse real? Or was Akamizu Castle doomed by the paranoia of a tyrant? One thing is certain, in Japan, the past is never truly gone. The spirits of the wronged still linger, waiting for justice or revenge. And if you ever find yourself near an abandoned castle, listen closely, because sometimes the whispers are calling for you. If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more terrifying stories.